Black women in the 1970s lived by different rules, doing things that kept families fed and communities strong. But laws have changed dramatically, and what was once normal is now illegal. Here are 20 things from the 1970s that Black women who lived through this era will never forget. Running unlicensed home hair braiding businesses was how many Black women earned money and served their communities in the 1970s. Women who were skilled at braiding set up shop in their kitchens or living rooms, charging affordable prices and building loyal clientele through word of mouth. Customers came at all hours, sitting on kitchen chairs while their hair was braided into intricate patterns that took hours to complete. The money earned helped pay bills, buy groceries, and keep families afloat in tight times. Nobody asked about business licenses or cosmetology credentials because the community trusted these women and their skills. The informal nature kept costs low and made quality hair care accessible to Black women who could not afford expensive salons. Today, many states require licenses even for natural hair braiding, making it illegal to operate without costly training and certification. For Black women in the 1970s, braiding hair at home was not just acceptable. It was an essential part of community economics and cultural preservation. Using lye-based hair straighteners without safety warnings was standard practice for Black women managing their hair in the 1970s. These powerful chemical relaxers contained sodium hydroxide, and they could burn skin and cause serious damage if left on too long. Women mixed their own relaxers at home or bought products with minimal instructions and no real safety information. The burning sensation was considered normal, just part of the process of getting straight hair. Scalp burns and hair breakage were common, but accepted risks that women managed as best they could. The products came in plain containers with basic labels that would never meet today's safety standards. Today, these products are heavily regulated with extensive warnings, safety instructions, and liability protections for manufacturers. For Black women in the 1970s, using harsh chemicals to straighten hair was simply what you did, and the dangers were just accepted as part of Black hair care. Selling homemade food door to door without permits was how many Black women supplemented their income and shared their cooking talents. Women who were known for their sweet potato pies, pound cakes, or fried chicken would make extra and sell plates to neighbors and co-workers. There were no health inspections, no food handler permits, and no business licenses required. A woman could bake 50 sweet potato pies in her home kitchen and sell them all before Thanksgiving without any government oversight. The transactions were simple and based on trust, with customers knowing exactly who cooked their food and where it came from. The income was usually cash that nobody reported on taxes because small informal transactions were not tracked or regulated the same way. Today, selling food prepared at home is illegal in most places without commercial kitchen certification, permits, and regular inspections. For Black women in the 1970s, turning cooking skills into income was a practical survival strategy that kept families fed and bills paid. Operating informal daycare for neighbors' children was how Black women helped working mothers while earning money themselves. A woman with children at home would watch 3 or 4 more kids from the neighborhood, charging a few dollars per day for each child. There were no background checks, no licensing requirements, and no regulations about how many children could be supervised. The arrangement was based entirely on trust and community relationships, with mothers knowing the woman watching their kids and feeling confident in her care. Children played together in yards, ate meals prepared in the caregiver's kitchen, and napped on couches or pallets on the floor. If a child got a scraped knee, it was bandaged and the parent was told at pickup. The informal nature kept costs affordable for working mothers who otherwise could not have afforded childcare. Today, Operating a daycare without proper licensing, training, background checks, and facility inspections is illegal and can result in serious penalties. For Black women in the 1970s, watching children was community care that operated outside any regulatory framework and kept working families functioning. Disciplining other people's children in the community was not just accepted, but expected of Black women in the 1970s. If a neighbor saw children misbehaving, she had full authority to correct them, scold them, or even give them a swat on the behind. The child's parents expected and appreciated this community oversight, trusting other adults to help raise their kids right. A woman could grab a child by the arm, march them home, and tell their mother what happened without any fear of legal consequences. This collective responsibility for children meant kids could not get away with much because eyes were always watching. Nobody called the police or social services when adults corrected children who were not their own. The community functioned as an extended family where everyone helped keep kids in line. Today, disciplining someone else's child can lead to assault charges, lawsuits, and serious legal trouble. For Black women in the 1970s, correcting neighborhood children was simply how the community worked together to raise respectful, well-behaved kids. Riding in cars without seat belts or car seats was completely normal for Black women and their children throughout the 1970s. Seatbelt laws did not exist in most states, and car seats were not required or even widely available. Babies sat on laps in the front seat, toddlers stood on the back seat looking out windows, and older kids piled into station wagons without any restraints. Women drove with infants in their arms or passed them to other passengers while the car was moving. Long trips meant kids sprawling across the back seat, sleeping, climbing over seats, and moving freely throughout the vehicle. Accidents happened, but the connection between restraints and safety was not legally mandated. Today, driving without proper car seats and seat belts is illegal in every state, with fines and potential child endangerment charges. For Black women in the 1970s, packing kids into cars however they fit was simply how families traveled, and nobody thought twice about the safety implications. Letting children ride in truck beds and station wagon backs was a regular occurrence that nobody questioned in the 1970s. Black women would load children into the open bed of pickup trucks for short trips around the neighborhood or even longer drives. Children loved riding in the back, feeling the wind and watching the world go by. Station wagons had rear-facing seats in the cargo area where children sat without seat belts, waving at cars behind them. Women saw nothing wrong with this because it was how everyone transported children when there was not enough room inside. The danger was accepted as minimal, and accidents involving children falling out of vehicles were considered freak occurrences rather than preventable incidents. Today, allowing children to ride in truck beds or unsecured cargo areas is illegal in most places and is considered reckless endangerment. For Black women in the 1970s, using every available space in vehicles to transport children was practical problem solving, not negligence. Leaving children home alone at young ages was standard practice for working Black women with no other childcare options in the 1970s. A mother might leave her 8-year-old in charge of younger siblings while she worked an evening shift or ran errands. The oldest child would be given strict instructions about not opening the door, not using the stove, and keeping everyone safe until the adult returned. 6- and 7-year-olds came home from school to empty houses, letting themselves in with keys worn on strings around their necks. They would do homework, watch television, and wait for their mothers to return from work. The necessity of working to provide for the family outweighed concerns about leaving children alone. Kids learned responsibility early and understood they had to follow rules to keep themselves safe. Today, leaving young children home alone can result in child neglect charges and involvement from Child Protective Services, with specific age requirements varying by state. For Black women in the 1970s, leaving capable older children in charge was often the only option available to working single mothers trying to survive. Kids walking to school alone at ages 5 and 6 was completely normal for Black families living in urban neighborhoods in the 1970s. Mothers would walk their kindergartners to school for the first few days, show them the route, and then send them off alone from that point forward. 5-year-olds walked several blocks with their little book bags, crossing streets and navigating sidewalks without adult supervision. The community provided informal oversight with neighbors watching from windows and porches, but there was no direct adult accompaniment. Children as young as 5 had their own house keys and walked themselves home after school, letting themselves into empty houses until parents returned from work. Parents trusted that their kids would follow the route they had been shown and arrive safely. Today, allowing children under 10 to walk alone to school can lead to visits from Child Protective Services and accusations of neglect. For Black women in the 1970s, sending young children to walk themselves to school was practical necessity and considered perfectly safe. Using lead-based makeup and beauty products was unavoidable for Black women in the 1970s because regulations had not yet banned these toxic ingredients. Face powders, lipsticks, and eyeshadows contained lead and other heavy metals that would never be allowed in cosmetics today. Women applied these products daily without knowledge of the health risks or the long-term consequences. Skin lightening creams popular in Black communities contained mercury and other toxic chemicals that damage skin and internal organs over time. Women sought lighter skin tones because of colorism and beauty standards, not realizing they were poisoning themselves. The products promised beauty and transformation, but delivered lasting health problems that many women did not connect to their cosmetics use until much later. Regulations eventually banned lead and mercury from cosmetics, but not before generations of Black women had used these products for years. Today, cosmetics are heavily regulated with banned substance lists and safety testing requirements. For Black women in the 1970s, using makeup meant unknowingly exposing themselves to toxic chemicals that the beauty industry freely included in products. Sharing prescription medications with family members was a common practice among Black women trying to stretch healthcare dollars in the 1970s. If a woman went to the doctor and got antibiotics for an infection, she might share the leftover pills with her sister or mother who had similar symptoms. Blood pressure medications, pain pills, and other prescriptions were passed between family members who could not afford their own doctor visits. The practice made economic sense when healthcare was expensive and inaccessible, even though it was technically illegal. Prescription bottles were kept in medicine cabinets long after they were empty, sometimes refilled with different medications or passed to others who needed them. Doctors rarely checked what other medications patients were taking, and pharmacy records were not interconnected like they are today. Today, sharing prescription medications is illegal, and pharmacies track prescriptions carefully to prevent abuse. For Black women in the 1970s, sharing medications was practical healthcare sharing within families who could not afford individual doctor visits for everyone. Running numbers or informal lottery operations was how some Black women earned income and provided entertainment in their communities during the 1970s. The numbers game was an illegal lottery where people bet small amounts on 3-digit numbers, hoping for a big payout. Women would collect bets from neighbors, keep track of who played which numbers, and pay out winners when their numbers hit. The operation was entirely cash-based and kept informal through word of mouth and trusted relationships. For many Black women, running numbers was a side income that helped pay bills and keep food on the table. The customers were neighbors and friends who enjoyed the small gamble and the dream of a big win. When state lotteries were eventually legalized, they essentially took over the same game that had been operating illegally in Black communities for decades. Today, running an illegal lottery operation carries serious criminal penalties. For Black women in the 1970s, being a numbers runner was risky but relatively accepted community work. Home perming hair with unregulated chemical products was a regular beauty practice that Black women and girls endured in the 1970s. Home perm kits contained harsh chemicals that burned scalps, damaged hair, and caused serious injuries when used incorrectly. The products came with minimal instructions and no real safety warnings about the potential for chemical burns or hair loss. Women and girls sat in kitchens with perm solution burning their scalps, believing the pain was normal and necessary for the curls or waves they wanted. Mothers applied these products to their daughters' hair without understanding the long-term damage they could cause. Some perms worked beautifully, while others resulted in burned patches, broken hair, and scalp damage that took months to heal. Companies marketed these products heavily to Black women without any accountability for the injuries they cause. Today, hair chemical products are regulated with required warnings, safety instructions, and ingredient disclosures. For Black women in the 1970s, home perms were a beauty standard that came with accepted risks and pain. Selling beauty products without business licenses was how Black women entrepreneurs built small businesses from their homes in the 1970s. Women bought wholesale beauty supplies and resold them to neighbors, co-workers, and church members without official business registration or sales tax collection. Products like hair grease, pressing combs, wigs, and makeup were sold from living rooms and car trunks, with profits going directly to support families. The sellers built customer bases through word of mouth and personal relationships, offering convenient shopping for women who might not have easy access to stores carrying Black hair care products. The women selling these products saw themselves as providing a needed service while earning income, not as operating illegal businesses. Profit margins were thin, but every dollar helped. Today, selling products without proper business licensing, sales tax permits, and record keeping is illegal and can result in fines and business closure. For Black women in the 1970s, selling beauty products informally was grassroots entrepreneurship that operated entirely outside official business regulations. Babysitting multiple children without certification was how many Black women earned money while watching their own kids at home in the 1970s. A woman might care for 6 or 7 children, ranging from infants to school age, charging affordable rates that working mothers could manage. There were no certifications required, no training mandated, and no limits on how many children one person could supervise. The arrangements were made informally between mothers who knew and trusted each other. Children were fed whatever the caregiver was making for her own family, napped wherever space allowed, and played together in yards or small apartments. Payments were made in cash, weekly or monthly, with no paperwork or tax reporting. If a parent was short on money, the babysitter might accept late payment or payment in trade, keeping the arrangement flexible and community-oriented. Today, providing child care for multiple unrelated children without licensing, training, background checks, and meeting facility requirements is illegal in every state. For Black women in the 1970s, babysitting was informal community work that helped mothers survive while earning the caregiver-needed income. Using DDT and banned pesticides in gardens was common practice for Black families growing their own food in the 1970s. Women who kept vegetable gardens to supplement groceries would spray powerful pesticides that are now known to cause cancer and environmental damage. DDT was still being used in some areas, even as it was being phased out, and women generally had no knowledge of the health risks. The chemicals killed bugs effectively, which meant better vegetable yields and less crop loss. Women would spray their gardens wearing regular clothes with no protective equipment, breathing in the chemicals and getting them on their skin. Children played in yards that had been recently sprayed, with no understanding that the chemicals were dangerous. The long-term health effects were not connected to pesticide exposure until much later. Today, DDT and many other pesticides from that era are completely banned because of their toxicity to humans and the environment. For Black women in the 1970s, using powerful pesticides was simply what you did to protect your garden and the food your family depended on. Corporal punishment in schools with paddles and switches was not only legal, it was actively practiced on Black children in the 1970s. Teachers and principals kept wooden paddles in their offices and used them on students who misbehaved or failed to follow rules. Black girls were paddled in front of classmates or taken to the office for punishment that included being hit multiple times. Parents generally supported this discipline, believing that teachers had the authority to correct children as they saw fit. A mother would tell her daughter that if she got in trouble at school and received a paddling, she would get another one at home. Nobody questioned whether hitting children was appropriate or effective. The paddles were thick wooden boards, sometimes with holes drilled in them that left bruises and caused real pain. Today, corporal punishment in schools is banned in many states and is considered physical abuse in most contexts. For Black women in the 1970s, accepting that their daughters might be hit at school was simply part of the educational system and discipline structure they had experienced themselves. Smoking indoors everywhere, including around children, was completely normal for Black women throughout the 1970s. Women smoked in their homes, in cars with children present, and in any indoor space without restrictions. Pregnant women smoked, and doctors did not warn them about risks to their babies. Children grew up breathing smoke-filled air in their homes, restaurants, and public spaces as a normal part of life. A woman might smoke while cooking dinner, a cigarette between her lips as she stirred pots on the stove. Car trips meant windows cracked while adults smoked with kids in the back seat. Doctors' offices had ashtrays in waiting rooms where pregnant women sat smoking. Today, smoking indoors around children can, in some situations, be considered child abuse, and it is banned in most public indoor spaces. For Black women in the 1970s, smoking wherever they pleased was a personal choice that nobody restricted or judged as harmful to others. Treating illnesses with homemade remedies sold informally was how Black women practiced community health care in the 1970s. Women known for their healing knowledge would mix remedies from herbs, roots, and other ingredients and sell them to neighbors for various ailments. These tonics, salves, and teas were made in home kitchens and distributed without regulation or testing for safety or effectiveness. A woman might sell a remedy for high blood pressure, arthritis, or stomach problems based on traditional knowledge passed down through generations. The transactions were informal and based on trust, with customers believing in the healer's wisdom and the remedy's power. Some remedies worked through the placebo effect, while others contained active ingredients that actually had medicinal properties. The practice was technically illegal even then, but enforcement was non-existent in Black communities where official health care was expensive and often inaccessible. Today, selling unregulated medical treatments can result in serious legal consequences, including charges of practicing medicine without a license. For Black women in the 1970s, making and selling traditional remedies was community health care that filled gaps left by an inaccessible medical system. Doing hair in kitchens without health department approval was the standard way Black women accessed hair care throughout the 1970s. A woman skilled at pressing and curling hair would set up a makeshift salon in her kitchen, using the stove to heat pressing combs and curling irons. Clients sat in kitchen chairs while their hair was washed in the sink, processed with chemicals mixed in bowls, and styled using tools that lived in kitchen drawers alongside cooking utensils. There were no health inspections, no sanitation requirements, and no separation between food preparation and hair care areas. The hot comb used to straighten hair sat on the same stove burner that cooked dinner later that evening. Hair clippings fell on kitchen floors and were swept up between clients. The arrangement was affordable and convenient, making professional hair care accessible to women who could not afford licensed salons. Today, operating any kind of salon service without proper licensing, health department approval, and dedicated sanitary facilities is illegal. For Black women in the 1970s, getting your hair done in someone's kitchen was simply how most women accessed hair care services they could afford. Which of these once normal practices surprised you the most? Drop a comment below to share which one hit home. Tap the like button and subscribe so you never miss another trip down memory lane.